Nitro, then. We had Nitro number 95, also July 7th. Gene Okerlund brought Kurt Hennig out for a promo. Kurt refused to reveal his plans, but said he would be at Bash at the Beach. Gene asked if he was going to be Dallas Page's tag team partner. And I can't believe this. I actually wrote Hennig here. That's embarrassing. Hennig insisted he was a free agent. So out comes Ric Flair with a lovely young woman in an evening gown. Attempts to recruit Hennig into the Four Horsemen. Kurt resisted, which to me was a smart move. Clearly he'd been watching Nitro for the past year, realized what a shit show the Four Horsemen had become. Finally, Hennig said nothing was final, but he did leave with Flair and the young blonde. Harlem Heat versus Public Enemy. They went back and forth a few minutes. Vincent came out to distract Harlem Heat. Booker T chased him away. So Stevie Ray is in there and he's doing just fine on his own. And he goes for a pile driver and Rocco Rock goes up top. Sherry shoves Rocco.
As soon as you start describing the finish like that, everybody should be well aware what a fucking mess this was.
That is the result, yes. Okay. I'll go into a bit more detail.
Please.
Stevie is pile driving Grunge. He's going to set him up for a pile driver. And Rocco is on the top rope in such a position that it appears he's going to help Stevie do a spike pile driver on Grunge. Sherry goes up top, shoves Rocco in the ass. Rocco goes flying into Stevie, who's holding Grunge for a pile driver. So Stevie lets go, which, if you're visualizing this correctly, you realize Grunge gets dropped onto his head. Literally dropped onto his head. Stevie goes down. Somehow this hurts Stevie, not Johnny Grunge. And Grunge covers Stevie for the pin.
Okay, I don't know if this is...
I did write, what MS?
I wrote, what a fucking mess. I don't know if this was what was supposed to happen. But Vincent comes out, and Sherry tries to alert her men, at which point Booker goes after Vincent. That leaves us with Stevie Ray against both of Public Enemy. Correct?
Yes.
So, shouldn't Public Enemy have double-teamed Stevie, and they went for a spike pile driver, and then Rocco got shoved off the top into them, they both fall down, and Stevie gets the pin. Doesn't that fucking make sense?
Well, they wanted Sherry to cost Harlem Heat the match.
She did. In my scenario, she also cost them the match. She sent Booker away.
I see.
Leaving Stevie by himself to get double-teamed, but then there's the rigmarole there at the end. Instead...
Either way, this is all too much dumb stuff.
Instead, Stevie gets left alone, and he runs wild on both guys. And then is going for a pile driver, and Rocco's going up top as he's doing that. What was Rocco's plan? To jump off onto both guys? Because that's what fucking happened when he got pushed off.
I don't know.
This sucked.
It's not good. Then... Harlem Heat gave Sherry a warning, told her to, if she couldn't get her act together, she needed to leave. She said, "You can't fire me, I quit." And she left. That was that.
Do you know that legit was the end of Sherry Martel's active wrestling career?
I figured this came out of such nowhere. It had to be that she quit like an hour before the show. Because there's zero build to this.
This was it?
Yeah.
What do you mean zero build? There was 2 years of her doing nothing. That's the build.
I guess so. I hadn't thought of it that way.
This started in 1995 when we were watching the show every week, and she was having a romantic affair with Colonel Rob Parker.
Yeah.
Which fucking went nowhere.
No.
And then she just remained with Harlem Heat doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Except drawing what I'm assuming was one of the fat WCW paychecks. I would do a lot of nothing for a WCW paycheck. We had a Chris Benoit, Kevin Sullivan hype video. All I can say about these is they had a lot of great matches. These hype videos are all so lame. Joe Gomez versus Conan.
I know I said the show was great, but it hadn't gotten great yet. We're still at the bad part.
I can only imagine. I realized Nitro was stomping them in the war at this point. But this had to have been a boost to Raw's rating. I wanted to turn to Raw when these guys came out.
Conan, and you know what? I love Conan and all, but Conan out there in a plaid shirt, jeans, and tennis shoes. Totally look like a fan.
They show Raven sitting at ringside, And I know it's his gimmick, but Ravens, he takes his seat, he looks at the action in the ring, takes a deep, deep sigh, and then just plants a disapproving scowl on his face. And I thought, that's my reaction to this match as well. And in fact, every time I see a lame match like this, I'm going to be reminded of this sick, disgusted expression on Raven's face. Because that's how I felt watching this too. Conan squashed him forever, won with a tequila sunrise. It sucked.
This was horrible. But thankfully, the show then began to turn around.
Villanos 4-5 versus Hector Garza and Juventud Guerrera. I think this is the match you were thinking of when you talked about.
Yes, this was it.
Just nonstop. You do a move, you do a move, you do a move, you do a move. Some of them be cool. Some of them be so spectacularly bad it's still cool. I love Larry's line here, where they're talking about how there's relaxed rules in Lucha Libre. You don't need to make a tag to switch. You can just leave the ring and your partner can come in. And Larry says he doesn't like these rules, and it's not just because he's an American or those are Mexican rules, he doesn't like them. He has a good reason for not liking these rules. When the rules are very relaxed and when they're not very strict, it's difficult to take advantage of them. In other words,
well, that's true.
The fewer rules there are, the harder it is to cheat.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
Well, it was, but what he also said was, I like the traditional rules better. And I was like, Larry, you're watching a Lucha Libre match, and these are the traditional rules. They're not having an American match, right?
I guess.
So he wanted to watch a Lucha Libre match where they stopped using their traditional rules and used modern American rules.
Yeah.
What a dick.
Of course.
Come on, dude.
So the most exciting spot in the whole match was Juvi hitting air Juvi and very accidentally falling over the ropes to the floor. It was all kinds of athletic silliness is how I describe this match. And the crowd went nuts when Juvi hit a tope and Garza hit a moonsault press. It should have been the finish, but they kept going. And a few minutes later, Garza hit a corkscrew plancha, sorta, and Juvi hit a Mutonuku driver and a 450 splash for the win.
It was spectacular, I'll give him that.
Oh, yeah. Scott Hall and Randy Savage came out to take over the announce desk. Larry refused to leave. So they promised to take care of that mid-card jabroni Diamond Dallas Page, ran him down a little bit. In the end, this was so brilliant. Hall flicks his toothpick in Larry's face, so Larry jumps up, and Hall rips off his t-shirt. He's ready to fight, but Savage grabs Hall and pulls him away. And this is so awesome because they managed to paint Hall as the asshole antagonizer, but neither guy had to be the one to back down. So neither guy had to be the coward. They both came out basically looking good.
What I loved about this was Randy Savage is laying on the desk and he's being all cocky. They're talking about their match that they have. At the pay-per-view coming up, it is Hogan and Rodman against Giant and Luger, as well as Hall and Savage against DDP and whoever the mystery partner is going to be. And Savage is splayed out on the desk, and in the cockiest manner possible, he says, "We are taking our opponents lightly."
Yes.
He does not give a shit. And he says, all of you out there watching on television, stay tuned. Later on, I'm going to go down and I'm going to give somebody a wrestling lesson. And of course, we know what happens. But I always love when a cocky heel gets theirs.
Oh, yeah.
And Randy was so good at it.
Yes.
He was such a pro.
We had a great video package. Give me a short history lesson of Lex Luger and the Giant, their history as rivals and as partners. It's clips from various shows, along with sit-down promos from the two of them edited in. So it goes back to World War III, when the finish was Lex Luger versus four dudes in the NWO. And Giant was impressed with how valiantly Luger fought, but in the end, there was four of them and one of him, and Giant ended up winning. But then, Giant was not given the title shot that was promised to him by the NWO. That was when he knew trouble was brewing. So Lex explains how WCW had welcomed him back, given him a fresh chance to start over. He had to do the same for the Giant, even though nobody else would. And this led to the four-way they had with Harlem Heat, where the winner would get a title shot, and how Giant had the match won, but decided he owed Luger a favor, and tagged Luger in so Luger could get the victory instead. They both talked about how they'd been insulted and embarrassed and humiliated by Dennis Rodman and the NWO, and they couldn't wait to get their revenge this Sunday. That was very good.
Not only that, but during virtually every commercial break, they had a graphic talking about the matches on Sunday, the date of the show. They promoted this so good. And obviously, Rodman was being paid millions of dollars.
Yes.
So the idea is, let's try to make some money off this fucking pay-per-view. And I was just like, if they spend this much time and effort promoting all of their pay-per-views during this period where they were on top, they might still be around today. I couldn't believe what a good job they did here.
Yeah. Vicious and Delicious versus Eddie and Chavo Guerrero.
This was so great.
First of all, they cut backstage. This is a classic WCW moment. They cut backstage to show a limousine arriving and then leaving. Then they go to the match, and yes, this was a great match.
The announcers tried to explain this faux pas by saying clearly whoever was in the limo saw the WCW cameras, and so they kept driving. It's like, oh. That was back when they cared enough to try to explain this bullshit.
Yes. So Bagwell early on hits a drop kick, marks out for himself. I laughed. And I thought, okay, he's been a fun, wacky character. And we get the Scott Norton suplexing both Guerreros at once, and that was awesome. So Bagwell is in the ring. Eddie blind tags himself in, hits a springboard drop kick to the back. Bagwell's pissed off. He gets up and slaps the fuck out of Eddie. So Eddie's pissed off. He fires up and he whips Bagwell's ass. Now Bagwell's pissed off and he press lands him. And this match rules. Oh, this is a great match. Eddie and Chavo weren't getting along. Eddie would always tag out as soon as he got in trouble and tag back in whenever Chavo got the advantage. And finally, Eddie walked out on him. And Chavo gave it his all, going alone against two men. He was eventually double teamed to death. And he was watching the stage, but blew Chavo off and just went to the back. And Bagwell finally pinned Chavo with the assisted blockbuster. It did go a little too long at the end, but that first part when it was all four guys in there was awesome.
I always liked Scott Norton, but man, Scott Norton was awesome. I love the idea, as I mentioned before, that Scott Norton and Buff Bagwell are pals.
Yeah.
The two most different people in the world.
The prettiest boy in the NWO, and the guy who's least pretty. You don't care.
I've said this forever. The day will never come when fans will not go crazy for a big, thick, strong motherfucker pounding the shit out of someone or throwing them all over the world.
Absolutely.
Every time Chavo gets left by himself and he's fighting valiantly. And it was hilarious watching Norton and Bagwell do Keystone Cops comedy spots to try to make you think as they trip all over themselves that maybe Chavo has a chance to win.
Yeah.
Of course he does not. And every time Chavo would make a big comeback and Norton would either suplex him or he would mow him down, the fans just went crazy. I loved this match. I loved it.
It was great.
It is Vicious and Delicious, underrated team.
Very, very, very. And it's greatly unfair that Bagwell is best known for that stupid Tacoma match, which wasn't even totally his fault. They do a WCW match in Tacoma, and gee, it got booed. Who knew? But it's not fair because for a long time he was a great babyface, and he turned heel a year ago, and he's been a great heel too.
Sad, he broke his neck. That was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, well, that was. So it was the start of the second hour. Heenan came out to do commentary, but Larry refused to leave.
Larry could at least have given him his chair.
He wouldn't do anything.
Like, I'm not getting out of your chair, so you stand there.
He explained he was there to see this Savage match. It was very important to him to watch this wrestling lesson.
Because, Larry always has to know everything and be the smartest man in the room.
Yes. So it was Randy Savage versus La Parka. La Parka had mysteriously grown 6 inches in height since last week. And forgot how to dance. Forgot about that.
You know what, though? Pretty good La Parka impersonation.
Aside from that, he did pretty good.
I mean, it was not blatantly obvious that it was not La Parka. And I would bet, based on the audience reaction, I would bet 99% of the people in the building were sure that it was just La Parka.
Yeah.
Didn't pay much attention to him.
I think in most cases you were right. I think the people who did pay attention to La Parka would realize right away that ain't La Parka. It was very, very basic chain stuff early, like arm ringers and arm drags and lots of stalling. And Hall left to go harass Zbyszko. So the fans are chanting for Larry, not even barely watching the match. They figure this is just a waste of time anyway. So Savage goes for a top rope splash, which I've never seen him do before or since.
Well, I think we were supposed to believe he was going for the elbow.
I see.
But the spot it ended up being a splash.
So Parker gets the feed up into Savage's face, and as Savage is selling, La Parka jumps up and hits a diamond cutter. He unmasks, it's DDP, and he makes the cover and gets the win. I think it would have been better if he had gotten the pin and then unmasked. But anyway.
It was interesting. I mean, I think they thought he's got to take off the mask so we get a giant pop at the finish. But you could tell, you never know how an audience is going to react until the moment. But the moment he hit that diamond cutter, everybody in the building figured it out immediately. There was no one in the building that thought La Parka had thrown a diamond cutter and stolen DDP's move. They knew immediately it was DDP, but I think DDP wanted to make sure they knew, so he unmasked.
He and they may have wanted the visual of Page's face as he pinned Savage.
It's also led to the most awesome moment where Hall is over there yelling at Larry, and he's not paying attention. And he only hears the referee count 1, 2, 3, and the audience explodes. And so he jumps to his feet, and he's raising his hands in victory like, yeah, we got La Parka! And then he realizes, what the fuck?
Savage is down. He runs down to ringside. He picks up the La Parka mask, and the gears in his head are slowly turning. He figures it out. So it was all a great angle. To make a long story short.
It was a really, really good angle. There were some good angles on this show.
Psychosis and Silver King versus Glacier and Ernest Miller. They cut backstage, and if you listen to any of my reviews for the past decade, you know, there's a lot of times I'll say, two guys are having a brawl, or some guys are brawling on the floor, and usually that's all there is to it. They cut backstage where Eddie and Chavo were having a brawl, and they were beating the fuck out of each other. These dudes are going to town. Look, the coolest thing Chavo ever did.
Probably not the first or the last time this happened.
It may have been an actual fight. That would explain a lot. So that was awesome. They went back to the ring. The match only went like a minute, and Wrath and Mortis ran down, and a 6-way brawl broke out.
Well, let's talk about Ernest Miller. This fella here had an amazing amount of potential. This was like his second professional wrestling match. Think about that. Took good bumps. His offense looked great. He could do a modicum of selling. But as we've mentioned before, he was the guy who taught Bischoff's son karate. Mm-hmm. And so he had zero incentive to get better. He literally started at an acceptable level, maybe a little below average, and he maintained that for his entire career. If he had spent just a little bit of time trying to get better, he may still have some sort of career today. God, he was good. For a guy in a second match.
So the Luchadors clearly wanted to be a part of all this. They were diving all over the place, and then went to break. Lee Marshall told a joke about Alice in Weaselland. Oakland brings Flair out for a promo. So Flair promises Roddy Piper's there and reveals a mannequin in a kilt.
Or as Gene referred to it, a cockamamie mannequin. That's what he said. And he delivered the line masterfully.
Yes.
All these geek backstage interviewers in NXT.
Oh, yeah.
There ain't one of them that could deliver the line about a cockamamie mannequin like Gene Okerlund did.
So Flair's running down Piper, says he's a stiff, and says he's carried more stiffs than there are apples in Washington. I live in Washington. I'm aware we have a lot of apples. They call the big college football game the Apple Cup. I've never heard anyone say more of blank than there are apples in Washington.
Well, he's Ric Flair, and I'm sure he was thinking Oregon. Isn't that by Seattle?
Sure.
How many times have you heard that?
I guess so.
I live in Seattle. Oh, is it in Oregon? No, it's not in fucking Oregon.
Yeah. So Piper comes up, stands behind Flair, and Flair doesn't know he's there.
You know what was great about that moment? If you've been watching this show, for the last probably, year, Ric Flair has just been a clown.
Yeah.
He comes out, he had shoulder surgery, so he had no feuds. He would just come out there and, he'd try to talk some guy into fucking some girl, and he'd laugh, and he'd just be all cockamamie. Here, he finally had somebody he was going to have a wrestling match with. And so he went out there and he turned in a 1986 Flair, and he cut a deadly serious promo about how he was going to beat this guy's ass. It was so great.
That is true.
I'd forgotten he could do it.
Yes. So the other question here is, as Piper stands behind Flair looking mean and the crowd's cheering, and Flair does the slow burn realization, who does the better slow burn realizing that his enemy is standing right behind him, Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan? They're both great at it.
Oh, man. They're both equally great.
Yeah.
Flair sells it better.
Flair does when he does when the light bulb goes on, he's better at that moment.
Hogan is really good at facially showing you the realization that, oh shit, I'm fucked.
Yes.
Whereas Flair physically sells the realization.
Okay.
Like he can turn around, see someone, and then spontaneously take a bump.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
So Flair runs down to the ring, Piper runs after him, and then they just did the same stuff they did 15 years earlier. Piper beat him up, stripped off his suit. Flair's running around doing spots in his green boxers with his pants around his ankles.
Fluorescent green boxer shorts.
Yes. Hey,
Are those custom fucking made?
He's the nature boy. What do you want? Benoit and Mongo run out there, and it's funny because Piper fighting them off, if you just watch this, it looked awful.
It was ridiculous.
It was the opposite of Eddie and Chavo beating the shit out of each other backstage. It looked terrible. But the place was going nuts.
Because one man beating up three.
Is cool.
Because they really weren't even looking at Roddy. They were looking at like Benoit bouncing all over for Roddy Piper. Which, by the way, think about that. Chris Benoit in his physical prime, bumping all over for a guy with one hip.
Yeah.
And then Mongo goes flying for nothing.
Yes.
Roddy
Piper waves his hands at him.
Roddy is whacking Benoit, and then he turns around, and maybe he was going to do the Dusty thing or whatever, where you roll your fists in the circle or whatever he was doing. Mongo just suddenly goes flying.
I think Piper may be a Jedi. He used the Force to knock Mongo down. Finally, they overwhelmed him. They're beating him down. This got even more heat, and they lay Piper out. And Benoit hit the farthest diving headbutt I've ever seen. He was 4/5 of the way across the ring.
And then...
Oh, yeah, there's more.
The announcers are screaming that we got to go to commercial. And then all of a sudden, Tony is screaming, there's somebody in the ring.
Yes, they've already cut to the wide shot and are painting the crowd.
Yeah, we're 1,000 feet away. And we just see someone in the ring.
Yeah.
Go to commercial, and we come back, and Tony is going on and on about, have you ever seen a night as crazy as this one? And I'm like, cool, who was in the ring? And Tony goes, Mike Tenay's in the crowd with Raven.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who the fuck was in the ring?
I assume it was Jarrett.
I thought it was Sullivan.
That's possible, too. It was
The point is, it's a mystery
Yes.
lost to fucking time because nobody bothered after commercial to tell us who was in the goddamn ring after they called attention to it.
Yeah. So Tenay tries to interview Raven, but he's interrupted because Stevie Richards makes his Nitro debut. So Tenay has no business doing this interview. I'll do it myself. Tenay points out, okay, you and Raven were former tag team champions. You interview him. Stevie calls the fans morons in Memphis. Everyone boos. Raven just rolls his eyes, embarrassed to be a part of any of this. Stevie asks Raven if he has signed with the WCW. Raven hits him and leaves. Stevie tells Tenay, I told you he didn't want to be interviewed. So yes, they brought in Raven and Stevie from ECW and just had them start over.
Yeah, start over in WCW.
Yes.
Not in Extreme Championship Wrestling.
Yes.
In Watered Down Championship Wrestling.
I guess so. Chris Benoit and Mongo versus the Steiners. As we've mentioned, Mongo is the perfect opponent for the Steiners. Because they're so big and scary, they don't care if he hits them. They'll just say, clobber us, it's fine. But then when it's their turn to go on offense, they're so big and scary, they can throw them around. It's a perfect match. And Benoit was great with them too, because Benoit was great with everyone. So, in short, this was a tremendous slobber knocker. This match was awesome as well.
Best mean guy match I've seen in months.
It was awesome. Suddenly they cut backstage where Randy Savage is torturing Nick Patrick and running room to room. I still have no idea what was going on there.
Well, presumably he was a referee that counted the pinfall when the fake La Parca pinned Randy Savage.
I see. The Steiners are double teaming Mongo. He makes his own comeback, rocking both guys with body shots.
Let me talk about the absolute best thing ever. First off, Scott takes Mongo to the top rope and gives him an overhead belly to belly.
Yeah.
Scott suplexed Mongo hither and yon.
Oh, yeah.
And Mongo couldn't do a goddamn thing about it.
Nope.
Because Scott gets bigger every week.
Yeah. He couldn't do a good goddamn thing about it, except take it and like it, which I think he did.
Yeah. So he gets thrown halfway across the ring, and upon landing, you don't even see where he came from. But Benoit flies in out of nowhere with a diving headbutt on Scott Steiner.
Yes.
Everybody's down. So Rick must have just been shaking with excitement as he watched all of this violence unfold in the ring. Because when he made the hot tag, he ran wild. And in fact, Rick Steiner did a move I have never seen before, nor have I seen since, and it was the coolest move ever. He whips Benoit into the ropes, and he goes for a backdrop. The old school Ohio Valley first move of the comeback backdrop. He whips Benoit in. He starts doing a backdrop. As Benoit leaves and starts being launched into the air, Rick suddenly leaps into the air, grabs him, and completes a belly-to-belly. That was the coolest fucking thing I have ever seen. Can someone please screen cap that or make an animated GIF so I can put that on Twitter? That was so awesome.
I was only able to describe that as an insane power slam.
Oh my God.
Not do it justice.
No, it doesn't.
So it breaks down into a four-way. Jarrett returns, I think, and he goes after Mongo. Benoit gets his hands on Jimmy Hart. Suddenly, Kevin Sullivan is at ringside with a chair, but Jacqueline's fighting him for some reason. He throws her down the first time. He breaks the chair over Benoit's head, grabs a pokey stick. He's going to take out Benoit's eye until Rick chases him away, but then Rick covers Benoit and pins him. Meanwhile, Sullivan is still manhandling Jackie, shoves her down 2 or 3 more times. It was a hell of a slobber knocker with an insane finish.
Dude, earlier in the show, we were watching the Harlem Heat thing, and they also had a schmaz at the end, and it was a fucking disaster. This was such awesome chaos.
Yes.
This was not a disaster. Everything here was fantastic. I don't know what was going on with Sullivan and Jackie. They stumble all over each other like 3 times and got in a fight. I don't know what's going on.
The announcers promised that Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman versus Lex Luger and the Giant would be the match of a lifetime. That'd be a sad life. Now, at this point, when I was watching the show earlier this afternoon, I had to go run some errands. I thought, there's like 10 minutes left. I'll come back and watch it later. Make a long story short, my errands ended up taking up all afternoon and evening, and I had to panically show up here early and try to get it watched. And now that I watched it, I don't know why. It was a waste of time. It was Bischoff and Hogan coming out for a promo. They made fun of Lex Luger appearing on Regis and Kathy Lee. Tons of garbage hitting the ring. And it was funny because there wasn't a lot of booing or chanting or any kind of audio sound. They were just throwing garbage to the ring like they had passed out cups of soda at everybody. So Luger and Giant come out. They're pelted with garbage as well. Bischoff goes after Luger, so Luger grabs him. Hogan does a skirt dance in the corner as Luger puts Bischoff in the rack and Giant chokeslams Vincent and Bagwell. And the story was Hogan left Bischoff high and dry to get tortured in the torture rack until Luger got bored and just dropped him. And that was the end of the go-home show for Bash at the Beach.
It is so amazing looking back. It is exactly as I remembered. You have this amazing undercard, and the main event with the main event guys is so goddamn boring. There was nothing of any note here. Came out, did the same promo we see every week, did some stuff, there was a schmaz, and away we go. It was weak sauce.
Yeah.
But hell of a great show.
The Steiner's match was awesome. I've already forgotten out what the other awesome segment was. There's 2 awesome segments on there. Oh, the Bagwell match.
That's right.
The Bagwell match and the Steiner's match were awesome. So,
that's right.
Anyway, that was Nitro.
So there you go, everybody. This is the last Brian Vinny show. Well, we'll be back on Sunday. I'll be back on Sunday.
You'll be back on Sunday.
Oh, you won't.
In fact, yeah. Next week on this show, it'll be you and Craig. Because I won't be back until after you're done recording.
How in the hell are you gone for so long?
I'll be leaving Friday, coming back Tuesday.
Jesus. I'm leaving Thursday, coming back Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I don't even want to leave Thursday. Well, one way or the other, we'll have shows, everyone, so get ready for that. Yeah. There'll be a lot of stuff from Vegas. Filthy will be on either here or live from Vegas. And Lance is on Wednesday. We'll figure out what to do with Granny since she'll be in Vegas.
Filthy, by the way, has challenged me in Vegas.
An eating contest?
Karaoke.
Okay, yeah. Good luck, Filthy. Good luck. Mm-hmm. You should have challenged him to an eating contest. You'd win that one. All right, everybody, that's it from here. We'll wrap it up, and we'll talk to you again after a while.
Bye.